Joyce Slater from the Department of Human Nutritional Sciences in the Faculty of Human Ecology. Joyce is a registered dietitian with lots of experience in public health and working in a variety of organizations. And she's going to talk to us today about some of her work dealing with the socio-environmental effects of what we eat on obesity and childhood obesity, particularly in Manitoba. So welcome to Dr. Slater.
Am I live? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Glavin, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak here today. It's always a pleasure to share my thoughts. I don't know if it's wisdom, but my thoughts and experience with others. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions about anything you see. As I'm going along, we don't have to wait till the end. And if I don't see you, shout out or stand up. So I had to submit a little brief paragraph about what I was going to speak about today, but often these things you have to submit what you're going to speak about before you actually develop what you're going to speak about. So I may have departed a wee bit from what I had submitted. Today we're going to talk about some of the major nutrition challenges and trends we're facing today. And I know I said I was going to talk about the future, which I will talk about a little bit, but I'm also going to talk about the past, because for all of you who've taken history in school, and I'm sure you have, one of the messages you probably learned was that we can't really understand the future unless we know where we've come from. And that's very important in the world of nutrition. And it's an area we often neglect because things have changed so rapidly, and who really thinks about food that much anyways, other than what's for dinner? So as I said, I'd talk a little bit about what it might look like in the future, and then a bit on my research interests. So we'll start with a little nutrition education, and I understand I'm not the only one using material from Homer. My students like this one, and I'm not even going to show you a picture of the food guide. But let's start talking about what influences our food choices. So, the one really neat thing about my area of research is I can talk to anybody in the world about it because everybody eats. So everybody's an expert, and they are, because everybody's responsible for what they put in their own mouth. So what influences our food choice? Is it your taste? Is it what you see advertised in front of you? Is it your family? Your friends or your family? Is it your ethno-cultural background? Is it the amount of money you have available? Well, it's probably all of those things, but it's a great deal more. And here's a schematic diagram that was developed by a lady named Isabel Contendo, who's a very important nutrition researcher in the United States. And you don't have to read everything on there, but the important message is that sort of your biologically determined behavioral predispositions, your taste, and your genetics, and your hunger, and your brain mechanisms are only a very small part of what influences our food experience and our food choice. So we need to move out from there and look at a much wider range of influences. And that's really what I'm interested in, is things that happen more on the bigger end of this series of concentric circles here. So, the physical food environment, the social environment, the economic environment, and, of course, the interpersonal environment as well. So let's talk a little bit about things that may have changed with respect to something I call the foodscape over recent years. So this is, then. I'm guessing this is in the 1940s, this picture. It's of a grocery store. And that was probably not atypical. There was a grocer at a counter. You picked out what you wanted at the back, and pretty much everything you needed was displayed behind there. This is, probably a dry grocer, and there was probably a vegetable seller out front with, baskets and wheelbarrows of fresh vegetables. But this is probably where people did their shopping, and you'll notice the people in that picture are all women because they tended to do the majority, if not all, of the shopping. So now we've got what they call in the UK hypermarkets. Anybody that's been in a superstore or what's coming to Winnipeg next year, Walmart is turning, I think, 3 locations into mega super grocery stores. So now we've got this kind of a situation where we've got massive grocery stores selling the bulk of the food that consumers buy for use in the home. Okay? So a couple other things have changed in recent years. Portion sizes. You may have seen some reference to this. Who's seen Super Size Me? Okay, so yeah, there's no question that our portion sizes have changed in recent decades. And this is only 20 years ago. They're showing a movie popcorn that is 5 cups. I was at a talk yesterday where someone was presenting, and I think it was 50 years ago, it was 3 cups. So this isn't even as far back as we can go. A couple other foods. 20 years ago, a hamburger was that. Today it's this. A bagel. You know, out at Timmy's there, you can get a bagel, and they're pretty substantial compared to what an original bagel was meant to be. And I could show you muffins and chocolate bars and bags of chips and plates of spaghetti and all sorts of things. And probably the most dramatic increase we've seen in a single food has been in soft drinks. So I have a little Coke bottle, and I meant to bring it, and I forgot it. I apologize. But you know, 100 years ago, a Coke came in a 6-ounce bottle. So 6 ounces is, you know, it would sit in the bottom of most of the cups or glasses that you would see in households today. So this is a bit more recent. That's probably from the 1970s and 80s, and it's 8 ounces, which is about 250 milliliters. And then, of course, we've got the big gulps. Not just a big gulp, but we have to have a super big gulp now. And another thing I forgot to bring was my bag full of sugar cubes. And there's about 44 sugar cubes, which is 44 teaspoons of sugar in that large, big gulp. And, you know, I just had to throw in the evolution of body shapes that we're seeing in Canadian children today. So, what else has changed? You know, 50, 60 years ago, probably still in some households today, you had mother serving the family food that she had cooked in the home from scratch. Not all from scratch, but generally it was prepared at home. The family sat around and ate, and that's the way it was. That was certainly the way it was in my household. My mother did not work outside the home, as did most of her peers not work outside the home. What's changed is 80% of women now work outside the home in Canada, but they're still doing the majority of the work around what we call domestic food. They're still the primary person responsible for feeding the family. So now we've got more of this going on, going through the drive-through, buying convenience foods, eating at fast food restaurants, because everybody's got to eat every day. Okay. Another thing that's really changed is how food is marketed. So, got a couple of examples here. The first one is Coke. So, I've got 3 years here. In 1902, the advertising budget of Coca-Cola was $120,000. In 1939, it was $50 million. That surprised me. That's a lot of money in 1939. That was during the Depression. Okay, and then in 2004, it was, you know, it's 2.2 billion, that many zeros, okay? And I actually read something the other day where one of the fast food executives in this interview, anonymous, was saying that the amount that's reported for advertising, because it has taxation implications, is actually a fraction of what's actually spent on advertising these products through, you know, endorsements and product placement. This is just direct advertising in, you know, the print and televised and I guess audio media. So it's actually much more than this. You know, let's not just pick on Coke. We've got PepsiCo. So PepsiCo is a conglomerate now of all these products that you see. Apparently I can point. All these products here. you don't want to just be drinking soft drinks. You want to be eating all those salty snack foods to go with it, so you'll drink more soft drinks. But, they've got some healthy stuff in there. Quaker Oats. PepsiCo owns the Quaker company. So all those granola bars and rolled oats that you see, and the cereals, the pre-made cereals, that's what PepsiCo likes to hold up front as, they're really promoting the health of not just the nation, but the world. But they don't tend to have those other products out there when they've got that banner up. But they spent $43 billion in 2008 advertising these particular products. So to think that we are not influenced by advertising with respect to what we eat is probably erroneous, because I don't think they'd be spending that much money if it didn't work. Okay. Another thing that's changed is advertising of these foods to children. And it's not just advertising these foods, it's actually creating food for children. So if you think about going to a restaurant, I mean, when I was a child, well, I'm old now, and we really didn't go to restaurants that much. But if you looked on menus from, 30, 40 years ago, there wouldn't be something called a children's menu. Well, now there's a children's menu on just about every menu you go to in a restaurant. And the majority of what you would see under a children's menu, I think this would be a great research project to go and track this, is, breaded, deep-fried sort of meat, French fries, hot dogs, spaghetti. It's all these sort of highly salted, fatty, soft type foods. They're usually white in color that people think children will eat. And, surprisingly, a lot of them do, because that's what they've been eating. So the idea of children's foods are not just that they're marketed to children, they're created for children. So, we can think of categories like breakfast cereals. Most breakfast cereal is highly sweetened, and it's marketed toward children. All the packaged lunch foods you see in kids' lunches now, Lunchables, Pizza Pops, just go through the freezer section. Again, those are all created for children. So, and then most of them have high sugar, fat, and salt, low fiber, not a lot of other nutrition. This comes from the Kaiser Foundation for the Family. It's a recent report on televised media and food. And children ages 2 to 7 see 13,904 television ads per year, which adds up to 107 hours of television viewing. So just for ads. That's not TV viewing, that's just the advertisements. So it sort of bumps up in the middle years, or getting toward the middle years here. 8 to 12-year-olds, it's more than double that. It's 30,000 ads and 230 hours of advertising viewing. That's not television viewing. And then it goes down a bit. I guess people are getting boyfriends and girlfriends at this age, so it's down to about 28,000 ads per year and 218 hours. So a lot of time being spent interacting with that screen just for commercial advertising. So very interesting. And I don't have statistics to show you here, but the vast majority of the foods that are advertised, it's about 80%, are for food, and almost all of those are for high sugar, fat, salt foods. Now, my professional organization, the Dietitians of Canada, has just come out with a position paper calling for the food industry to curb this. It's out there. We should be doing something about this advertising as a policy mechanism to try and change this. And, so far all industry has been willing to do is have voluntary withdrawal and reduction of advertising, which the evidence suggests that maybe isn't working very well. Okay. So I thought we'd do a little quiz. Here, this is a bacon double cheeseburger. It looks pretty good. How come it always looks better in the picture than it does in real life? I don't know. And a Timmy's iced cappuccino. It's a medium iced cap. So which one do you think has more calories and fat? Well, McDonald's, of course. McDonald's is horrible. There's 320 calories and 15 grams of fat in that burger. there's 360 calories and 14 grams of fat and 10 teaspoons of sugar in that ice cap. So probably one of the most important things you can do for your own personal health is to learn how to read a label and know what you're eating. And one thing I will credit these food companies for is you can find all of this information on the web. They're not hiding it. You know, you can go look up what's in everything. You know, I've got another slide. It's not here for, you know, the double down. My students love that one. You know, it's no secret. They're not trying to hide any of this. So here's another one. I don't want to pick on calories and fat. We've got a box of Cheerios and a bag of chips. Which has more salt? It certainly does. Not a lot. But for 28 grams of each, same unit, there's more salt in those Cheerios. And I don't know if you can read the banner up there that, you know, it's clinically proven to help reduce cholesterol, those Cheerios, but not blood pressure. They don't talk about that, okay? So know what you're eating. Okay, I've got one more. I do these up. I teach 3rd and 4th year nutrition. And so here's a couple of nutrient labels off of the web. These aren't a standardized nutrition label. So this is fast food. It's a fast food company. And I've kind of doctored up the one on the right to look like the one on the left. So I've got 2 foods here. And you look at both of them and, you know, they're not nutrition powerhouses by any stretch. You've got 35 grams of fat in this single serving on the left. And you've got 29 on the right, 680 calories, 530 calories, you know, less fat, less calories, a little bit more protein on the right there, a few more carbs on the left. Fiber's definitely better on the left, a little bit on the right. Sodium, way higher on the left. Does anybody know how much sodium we're supposed to have a day? Anybody want to guess? You have to shout it out. Yeah, you're right. That is the optimal, that is what the Sodium Working Group came out with this summer as a recommendation for a target to really address the issue of hypertension in the population. Do you know how much we have a day as Canadians? It's about 4,000. So we've got a big gap there. So you can see you'd have way more, almost more, in either of these foods. But I won't dwell on sodium. So I want to show you what these foods are. Okay, I don't know if I got my animations right here. Okay, one of these foods is from the Pita Pit. And I like their logo, or their how they build themselves here. Just say no to high-fat junk food, high-carb, high-sodium junk food, and yes to fresh served. Sounds really good. And I like the Pita Pit. And there's the pita. It's the one on the left. It's a 9-inch falafel, hummus, and tzatziki pita. There's no meat in there. The meat would knock that sodium off the charts, and it would add fat to that. What do you think is on the right? It's a Big Mac. So, just a little background there. Now, I'm not endorsing Big Macs here. It's just for illustration that, again, know what you're eating. So, what does all this mean? Well, the leading causes of death in Canada are cardiovascular disease, and you can see that that's the biggest piece of the pie, and cancer is the second biggest piece of the pie. Then you've got chronic respiratory illnesses and diabetes. Now, the reason diabetes is so small is because people don't generally die of diabetes. They tend to die, people who have diabetes tend to die of heart disease. Okay? So, and then you've got a whole list of things. Okay? And the cost of these chronic diseases to Canadians is estimated to be $80 billion a year annually. Okay? So this isn't just, you know, we're making bad choices. There's a real impact. And about 35% of all cancers are nutrition related. That's from the World Cancer Research Fund, big body that studies cancer trends around the world. Almost 2 million Canadian adults have that T2DM, means type 2 diabetes mellitus. So that's not the kind of diabetes that you have where you have it as a kid and inject insulin. This is the kind of diabetes you get as you age, and it's associated with excess weight. And you know, obesity, which is a problem I'm going to talk about in a minute, is directly related to a lot of these issues. So in Canada, 60% of Canadians are either overweight or obese. Those are adults, and more than 25% of kids are overweight or obese. We have a fat country. We've got a real problem. And you know, that many people, it's not just because they didn't join CBC's Live Right Now campaign. There's something else going on. It's not just that people don't have willpower, or they're making bad choices, or they didn't know how to read the food labels, although those things would help. Okay, what's next here? So I'm giving you a few snapshots now of things that are happening out there with respect to nutrition and health. Another really important one we don't always hear a lot about is food insecurity. So, you know, without going into a bunch of definitions, when you have food security, it means you have enough food for your health that's personally acceptable and you acquired in a socially acceptable way. So you didn't get it from a food bank, you didn't get it out of a dumpster, you didn't go to a soup kitchen. You got it because you had the financial means to get it. So not everybody, surprise, surprise, in Canada or in Manitoba has food security. So Winnipeg Harvest provides emergency food assistance to enough people to fill the MTS Centre every month. And 45% of those receiving food from Winnipeg Harvest are children. And guess what? A bunch of them are overweight. Now, how could that be? You know, people aren't getting enough food. How could they be overweight? Well, they're overweight because the kind of food that they generally get from Harvest is cheap food that's given away by food companies because they get a tax write-off. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's how it works. And so they get lots of bread, frozen French fries, canned goods, stuff like that. Not a lot of fresh meat, not a lot of fresh vegetables, almost no fruit. So you can see that the numbers have really skyrocketed here in the last 10 years, okay? More than tripled. Okay, and 1/3 of the families receiving food from Harvest are what we call the working poor. They're not, you know, they're not people on welfare trying to work the system. They're actually people that are working, and they're dual income workers. So both mom and the dad are working at low-paid service jobs. Now, this isn't just a problem in Winnipeg, and without going into a lot of detail, because I don't have that much time left, I do some work up north, and I took these pictures. I don't know if you can read them. This is in a community called Lac Brochet. These peppers here are $9.69. I think that's a kilo. And milk here, a 4-liter jug of milk, is $12.99. And I was just talking to a lady last night at dinner, who I work with on a research project, whose sister lives in, it's like Kingfisher Lake or something in northern Ontario. And she told me the price of milk in that community is $17 for 4 liters, okay? So we can certainly see that this is going to have an impact on what people eat in our northern communities. So what does this all mean for Manitoba? Well, this was in the newspaper 2 weeks ago. There was a big report came out about diabetes. They say a storm is about to hit the province. And the subtitle, I think, is very interesting. It's not about, you know, health. It's about the economic impact this is going to have. And the quote is, the economic burden of diabetes in Manitoba is serious and threatens the sustainability of our healthcare system and the provincial economy. So this is the first time, I mean, I've been tracking this stuff for about 20 years, that I've really seen the economic argument come out. And there was also a big report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the group of countries Canada belongs to, with a report on obesity saying it's going to be a major factor in economic productivity in the next 20 years if we don't do anything about it. So some other important trends. Well, let's go outside Canada. We still have incredible global inequalities with respect to health and nutrition. So here's just a little cartoon showing that, you've got people who are still severely malnourished. We had spikes in food prices after the economic turndown in 2008. It's made the situation worse. And then we've got the very, very big, no pun intended, obesity issue in the West. Okay, so what else is going on? Here's some pictures that, it's not quite as bifurcated as what's shown in this picture. A lot of developing countries are going through what we call the nutrition transition very rapidly. It's what happened in the West over 100 years. It's happening in a period of 10 years in some of those countries. People are going from that, undernourished, low body weight situation to developing obesity and diabetes in a very short period of time. So just to show you that, you look at countries like Lebanon and Saudi Arabia have very high rates of obesity. You wouldn't think of those necessarily. And going down the list, some middle-income countries as well. And within low-income countries, you find, say in India, very large diabetes problem developing with the middle class participating in this new food economy and gaining a lot of weight. Another trend, global meat consumption. Countries get money, they want to drive cars, they want to eat meat. Why not? We do that. I'd want to do it too. So here's a projection from the Food and Agriculture Organization of meat consumption around the globe, what it's projected to do by 2025. So where does this meat come from? Well, it comes from animals. So there's intensive animal production going on all around the world right now to meet this demand. And the United Nations, this article ran in Maclean's magazine last year, saying, is this the next big, do we need to really look at our meat consumption as a factor in global warming and desertification of agriculture lands? Okay, a little more on globalization of food. In 2004, Coke increased their global advertising budget by I forgot million on there, sorry. It's actually $350 million. And they're aiming for these 4 countries because they see that as their next big market. Okay? The world's biggest grocery retailer is soon to be Walmart. Real concentration of global food within a handful of companies. So I said I was going to talk about the future a bit. So when I think about my profession, and I was a dietitian for many years, and now I'm a professor here at the university doing research and teaching, there's kind of 2 ways to go. You can go in, and many of my colleagues do that, and they do it very well. They're researching, are there new nutrients yet to be discovered? And I guarantee you there are. What are the new functions for old nutrients in disease prevention? We're learning all kinds of things about, how, we used to think of infectious diseases over here and chronic diseases here, and now we're seeing that there's a real relationship. You have inflammation playing a strong role in the development of heart disease, and, people with H1N1 were much more susceptible to death if they were obese. So there's these connections that people are discovering. Can we make new foods that fight disease and make us live longer? My colleagues at the Richardson Center for Functional Foods, that's exactly what they're doing. They're developing new food products like, margarines with plant sterols and eggs with omega-3 fatty acids that are novel new foods that might play a role in this. And another really important area that's being researched is, do different people need different nutrients? So my colleague, Peter Eck, Dr. Eck, is a Canada Research Chair in Nutrigenomics. He provided me with this definition that he uses. It's the science that studies the variations of DNA and RNA characteristics as related to nutrient responses. So, for those of us that can afford it, down the road, maybe there'll be designer diets based on your genetic makeup that you can eat that will increase your longevity. So and I like this picture from Peter. He sent this to me. It shows people are very different. Do we have different nutritional requirements? So that's his area of research. Okay. What I study is more going out. Okay. So I don't have a lab. My lab is the community. And I look at how society, the environment, and the economy influence diet and health. So that's my area of interest. So a couple more little trends I want to show you. So, you know, I talked about food production changing. So the family farm is like a dinosaur. It's dying out. Family farms are becoming big, 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 and concentrated, you know. My sister and her husband are a great example. They farm in southern Saskatchewan. My dad was a farmer in Saskatchewan. I'm not farming. My sister's 2 boys. One's in the military and the other's at film school. They're not farming. They'll be selling their farm and someone will buy it and add it on to another farm. So we've got this intensified agriculture production. There's a picture of a feedlot. That's how we raise meat these days because the demand we saw is very high. And the competition for food, the profit margin for producers, not the food companies, but producers, is very thin. So there's a lot of competition out there. Other things that are happening, you know, some people think the methane produced by all these cows is a major contributing factor to global warming. We're losing agriculture lands to urbanization, and the issue of corporate control over the food system has been very well documented. Did I do that? For me, it's really important for me as a researcher, and what I try to teach my students is how to understand the food system. Now, I'm not going to pretend for a second that I understand all the dynamics of this, but it's certainly important for them as future nutrition professionals and me as a researcher to understand that the food system is much more than what goes onto the shelves at the grocery store. So just as a way of illustrating this, here's a Caesar salad that you might find at, actually, some of this information came from Aramark, which is the food service provider on campus here. I know the dietitian that works for them in Toronto. So here's a Caesar salad. Looks nice and fresh and healthy. Where did it come from? So the cheese maybe came from Idaho. The chicken could have come from Brazil. It's made in a factory down there, chopped up, shipped up. The lettuce is probably from Mexico. And the garlic and spices probably came from China. So that's a real global dish there, but not in the sense that we may have, you know, it's not ethnic cuisine as we would have thought of it. Okay, another little, I always like to show this one. So when we talk about change, and I did a study a couple years ago. Am I okay for time? Where I looked at changes in the food supply over 30 years in Canada. And after I did all the analyses, what popped out, the 4 food, they're not foods in the sense that, you know, it was a Hershey bar. They're commodities. And the 3 top commodities that have really increased in the Canadian food supply in the last 30 years were white flour, shortening and shortening oils, and soft drinks. So when I saw those first 2, I went, donuts. Like flour and shortening, donuts. So I went and I contacted the Tim Hortons company. And in 1976, there were 57 Tim Horton franchises in Canada. In 2005, there were 2,540. And in 2000, that's the latest data I have is from 2007. So I guarantee you it's much, much greater than that. And we should have all bought shares when they went public a couple years ago. I really kicked myself for that one. So, and I was at a talk yesterday. A woman was giving from northern British Columbia, and she works in a community. Oh, is it Prince Rupert, Prince George? I can't remember. 80,000 people. There are 8 Tim Hortons in that community. So, like I said, I don't know where this is going, but it's very popular. All you have to do is go and look at the lineup out there. And at the Bannatyne campus, our other campus, I don't know if you're going there, there's a Tim Hortons franchise, and someone put up a camera so you could log on and see how long the lineup was. And you wouldn't have to waste your time in line. You could go at a more strategic time. Now, it's not all bad. There's some neat stuff happening out here. Right now, today, is the Growing Local, Getting Vocal conference. It's not being put on by the University of Winnipeg. It's at the University of Winnipeg. It's being put on by Food Matters Manitoba, which is a nonprofit organization that I do research with here in Manitoba that looks at the food system and what's happening with it. So they're promoting the idea of local foods, trying to get, you know, just for example, in one initiative that the province is involved in, and Food Matters is a fundraising initiative in schools. So instead of the old chocolate bars that we all used to sell, they've got a program set up with Peak of the Market where you buy vegetables. And it's great. You buy a $10 or $20 bag of vegetables, you fill out the order form, and they get delivered to you, to the schools. Volunteers pack them up. It's been a hugely successful initiative. So using local products, getting away from, you know, the chocolate. That's just one example. The workshops going on at the conference are all about, it's everything from how to, you know, smoke wild game to growing gardens in the inner city and having food standards in daycares, all kinds of really neat stuff going on. So just quickly, I will go over my research interests here a bit. So I'm really interested in this idea of the foodscape and how it contributes to obesity. I do a lot of work in the area of food security and vulnerable populations, and I'm very interested in the idea of food literacy. You know, if I asked all of you, do you cook? You'd probably all say yes, but I bet it means something different to every one of you, and I'm really interested in finding out what that means. So here's a slide from a study I did a couple years ago showing how the pink line is the amount of calories that are consumed per person per day in Canada from 1985 to 2003. Now, that's not every person eating that. That's an average, okay? So it's gone up. Oops, sorry. It's gone up. I don't have it on here. 417 calories per person per day since 1985, okay? Even if that's an overestimate, it's still a staggering amount. And you can see that the obesity rates track almost perfectly with it. So, you know, I think there's a relationship. Another initiative I'm involved in, we just received funding from the Public Health Agency of Canada for a project that we're calling Our Food, Our Health, Our Culture. It's an obesity intervention strategy, but we're taking a community-based approach. We're working with 3 communities over the next year to initiate interventions. The communities are Fox Lake, Manitoba. It's a First Nation community in the northern part of our province. The North End Community Renewal Corporation, which is the north end of Winnipeg, Selkirk Avenue area. And the third community is in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, another First Nations community. So we're working with those folks to primarily bring back traditional foods and traditional food knowledge into the community. We're having, you know, elders come into the schools and do teaching, and we're having workshops on how to hunt. In Fox Lake, we're doing a distribution program of meat in the community that hunters bring in. So not what you generally think of when you're thinking about obesity prevention. You're probably thinking village on a diet. Well, we're not doing village on a diet here. We're doing village on traditional foods. And in the North End, there's a woman named Margot Malabar who's this amazing community developer who runs the North End Food Security Network. She's got all kinds of really neat projects going on, and they're going to be one of our sites for this initiative. For example, we're evaluating the grocery shuttle project. So in the North End of Winnipeg, you know, there's not a lot of grocery stores. There's a lot of convenience stores. You don't get a lot of fresh, healthy food at a convenience store. And one of the big problems for folks is they don't have cars. So the North End Food Security Network has initiated a shuttle bus. R.B. Russell Schools provided the shuttle. And so from December till March, we're going to evaluate if that's, you know, making a difference for people. Early results say it certainly is. And the grocers have been fantastic. They're on board with this. They're putting all their, you know, vegetables on special, and the Food Security Network they've got people developing recipes with those foods, and it seems to be going very, very well. Here's just a couple pictures of what I do. I'm up north in Lac Brochet with my research team there. That's Dr. Pam Moore, Dr. Linda Larcombe, myself, and our 2 research associates, Matt and Carolyn. We're up there this past year. And that's me. You know, when I go up, they always ask me to come and do some nutrition in the school, so we're making whole wheat bannock in the classroom there. This is a project I have in the inner city here in Winnipeg with an organization called Sunshine House. It's a community resource center for people with addiction problems. Most of them are homeless or nearly homeless. don't have a fixed address. And we had a garden project. So we've got the lady in the hat. Her name's Audrey Logan. She's an Aboriginal gardening elder, and she's working with our group there to plan a sort of traditional garden. We had tobacco plants and beans, and she's very passionate about teaching folks that their history is in agriculture and not just in hunting. And there's the garden. That's my student Manon, who was responsible for the project, and it's great. It grew, you can see. This is another project I'm involved in with Dr. Steph McLaughlin from Earth and Environment here at the University of Manitoba. This is a site in Alexis, Alberta, where it's a moose camp that we went out to last year, and we just found out we got funding to go again this year, looking at contaminants in the food supply along with chronic wasting disease. So part of the goal of the moose camp is to get the kids involved, because that's the future, and like all of us, I'm trying to teach my kids, and they're trying to teach their kids, and these little girls were really into carrying the meat back from where they were dressing this is a deer actually, and there's me with Daisy, and we're cutting moose meat and I don't have a picture of it, but there's big racks where they're smoking it to keep it for the rest of the year. So I was learning how to cut it. Okay, this is my last slide, and it's not all bad. I showed you all those horrible nutrition labels, so I better show you a good one to finish with. So here's a serving of a food, and if you look at the label, it's got lots of fiber, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of protein, lots of carb, not too much salt, no cholesterol, no trans fat, no saturated fat. What do you think it is? Anybody want to guess? You have to shout. Which? No, but that's a good guess. No, but you're close. It's the same color. No? Yeah, somebody said sweet potato. It's sweet potatoes. They're a superfood, and kids generally like them because they're sweet. And that's the end of my talk. So thank you. And if you have any questions.
We rearranged the order so that this talk wasn't just before lunch. So we had one of the businesses before lunch, so don't be scared to go and have lunch. Questions for Dr. Slater?
Yes. It depends on what from an environmentalist perspective, don't drink it. Don't drink bottled water, At the University of Winnipeg, I was there yesterday, all their water fountains now have not just the press and, you don't know if someone's licked the thing, so you don't want to drink out of it. They've got the thing, like a dispenser and it says for your bottled water, so you can go get it. So what do I think? I don't think you should be drinking too much of it. From a health perspective, there's no evidence that in moderate amounts that they're harmful to you. Probably some of the sweeteners are better than others. The evidence suggests that sucralose is better than aspartame. But, in moderate amounts, there's no reason to not drink it. Yes?
What exactly are plant sterols?
Well, you'd have to bring in Dr. Jones, and he would tell you, but in a very specific sense. But generally, they're a component found in plants that, do all sorts of wonderful things to you. They lower your cholesterol and blood sugars, and they, fight free radicals. But before you get all excited about plant sterols, what I would tell you is all plants have plant sterols, and we should be eating plant foods, maybe more than margarine with plant sterols in it. So not that doesn't have a role in, if you're going to eat margarine, maybe that's a good one, but we should be eating just more plants and not taking things out of plants and sticking them into other packaged food. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, sure, but it's not the restaurant, it's what you choose at the restaurant, okay? So you have to educate yourself, So every fast food restaurant you could go in and, and how often are you going? And what are you having there? So are you having, the triple layer burger with everything on it, or are you having, a regular hamburger? Are you having the extra large fry, regular fry? Are you having the extra large drink, regular drink? It's those kinds of, you have to sort of figure that out yourself. Yeah? Well, I'm in Manitoba, so I better say canola oil. Yes. I think they're great. But I used to be a dietitian, lots of people who have really crappy vegetarian diets because they eat cheese all the time and, have their, loaded pizza with just cheese on it, or they've replaced meat with cheese instead of with these plant foods like beans and pulses and things like that. So, yeah, but at the same token, a modest amount of meat is absolutely fine as well. Yes?
You said 1,200 milligrams of sodium per day, what you're after. Why is 72 milligrams?
Because those are the old, that is a new recommendation, and those are based on 2,400, so double that. So, yeah. I'll just, yes? I don't know. I think we'll have to wait and see how that goes because, people sure don't like when food prices go up. And we do have the lowest food prices in the world. Yeah.
Let me repeat that. Is it a typo that says vitamin A is 169%?
No, that's not a typo. It's a great source of vitamin A. Well, it's actually not vitamin A in there. It's beta-carotene, which is fine. If it was vitamin A, it might be actual, but that's a precursor to vitamin A that comes out of plants, and that's okay. You can eat as many sweet potatoes as you want. Polar bear liver, I wouldn't recommend. Okay.
Join me in thanking Dr. Slater again.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.